Hello, this is Michael Wojak with your City Council update for December 7th, 2009. Included in this update, I'm also going to talk about the budget hearings that happened a couple days after that. This video is coming a little bit late because there has been so much happening these last couple of weeks. As most of you probably read in the newspaper, we had our vote as to what exactly we were going to do with the proposed Weiss Skyway. Very disappointed to report that we lost that battle by a 4-3 vote. Voting in favor of the Skyway was Dennis Hansen, Bruce Snyder, Bob Nowicki, and Sandra Means. Voting against it would be myself, Mark Bilderbeck, and Ed Ruska. Let's talk about what's going on here. Essentially, we're building a Skyway that has no public benefit whatsoever. It exclusively benefits a single developer. Because we have to do this extensive route, we're taking what should be a less than $500,000 subway and we're building it for $1.4 million. You, the taxpayer, have the privilege of paying $700,000 of that, with Joe Weiss paying the other $700,000. However, because every bank in the world knows that this is a boondoggle, Joe could not get financing for his half. So we, the taxpayer, are graciously going into the business of lending again, and we're borrowing Joe Weiss his half. So I won't lie to you and tell you that I'm real happy about this. I think you all know where I stand. I think this is egregious corporate welfare. It absolutely disgusts me, but that's the way the vote went down. I will point out, too, with a 4-3 vote, the mayor, if he so chose to veto this, would kill the project. However, as you know, there has not been a mayor veto. Therefore, Mayor Breedy is also in support of this Skyway, and you should be well aware of that. You can continue to lobby Mayor Breedy because if he vetoes it, this is dead on arrival. You need 5 votes on the council to override a veto, and they're not going to get that. The other thing that happened at the meeting is we had our annual Truth in Taxation. We had a couple of people that brought up some good points. One thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about that was, I don't think, very accurately communicated by the council or by the or by the press, I think, as a result of the poor communication by the council. But with regard to the street light utility, one thing you should realize is that we reduced the overall levy of the city by about $1.2 million initially. That's the same $1.2 million that's going into the street light utility. So this is not a case where we're creating a fee instead of raising taxes. We're actually creating a fee and then we're replacing a tax with that fee. And I think that's something that everyone should be aware of. Now, it was brought up by somebody who came that, well, if it's a fee, we can't deduct it from our taxes, and if it's a, whereas if it was taxes, it'd be something that we could have some tax savings on. And what I point out is that this fee is going to represent approximately $25 per year. So if you're itemizing and you at about let's say 1/3, you get 1/3 of that back. You're talking about getting like $8 back. So this would be, in fact, costing you $8. Now, on the other side of that is the fact that right when you pay property taxes, a lot of nonprofits do not necessarily pay property taxes, even though they would have to pay the street light fee. So the reality is there's actually savings there because whereas it becoming entirely from the property taxpayers, now it's coming from everybody who has street frontage in the city of Rochester. So we're actually spreading out that a little bit more. The net result to you, the taxpayer, is it's basically a push. And anyone that tells you otherwise has probably got an agenda, but it's basically a push. Moving on now to the budget hearings, a few interesting things that I took out of it. First and foremost is that the City Council does a lousy job of oversight of city budgets. Essentially, our involvement in this consisted of about 8 hours of sitting down and going through line items of the budget. I received my materials for reviewing the budget Sunday night. We had budget hearings Tuesday and Wednesday. Between the information on outside agencies, the capital plan, as well as the operating budget of the city, that's like 500 pages of financial data. And I had a matter of a couple of days to figure it out with the council meeting mixed in there as well. That is not enough time. The 3 nights, I think Sunday night I was up until about 2 in the morning. Monday night after the city council meeting, I was actually up until about 4 o'clock that next morning. And then Tuesday, between day 1 and day 2 of the meetings, I was up until about 2 in the morning again. I did go through that financial data and everything behind it, line by line, all 500 pages. I would be lying if I said I think that a whole lot of people in the history of the city have done that. And by not doing that, we essentially abdicate the responsibility for setting city policy to city administration. Now, city administration has done a very good job, but council is supposed to be leading the city, and I just don't see that happening. A couple highlights from the budget process. First and foremost, something that I pretty strongly support is that we're going to have more officers. We're going to have one more officer per shift. It's going to not necessarily. I don't think if you're looking to this to reduce crime. Well, first of all, hiring more cops doesn't reduce crime. There's kind of a little disconnect there. But what it is going to do is it's going to have a little bit more backup for our officers that are out there. I support this primarily from the standpoint that I don't want to see our police officers responding to a domestic violence call without any backup. I think that's dangerous for them, and I think that we need to do what we can within our power to provide them adequate backup out there. We also hired 4 new police officers. I think my disappointment here is we didn't have any discussion. It was just kind of a knee-jerk reaction. I've always wanted to get officers back in the neighborhoods, particularly some of these neighborhoods that have reoccurring problems. Cimarron Court comes up. Of course, Cimarron Court was designed by a ghetto developer to be a ghetto. And funny thing, 25, 30 years later, it's parts of that are turning into a ghetto. Who didn't see that coming? But we have some other neighborhoods. I know East Side has had some recurring issues, and some other parts out in the southeast that if we can put a single officer there and they can adopt that neighborhood and take responsibility for that neighborhood and have the levity to request city resources, whether it be building inspections, and basically drive out some of the criminal elements and tamp down some of the criminal elements in these neighborhoods. That's what these neighborhoods need. You shouldn't have to live in fear because you live in a certain neighborhood of Rochester. So I'm very happy that that's happening. So basically, adding 8 police officers, you might wonder, well, what happened to the city budget? And this is something that I'm particularly proud of, is that first time in certainly, probably my entire lifetime, but certainly as long as I've lived in Rochester, the 2010 budget for the city of Rochester is actually less than the 2009 budget. I've never seen that happen before, and I think that's a wonderful job done by the city. But in particular, I think the thank you needs to go out to city staff, because we understood what was going on with all the massive cuts that we've gotten from the state, and as a result, with a combination of furlough days and some other groups that have not yet agreed to, but I anticipate will agree to wage freezes in 2010. We're going to be able to basically hold the line on employee expenses and move some other stuff around. And the net of it is that whereas in the past we've been growing at about 6% per year in the city budget, our city budget in 2010 actually went down a little bit. That's important because we lost close to $4 million from the state of Minnesota. These are the dollars that are supposed to account for the fact that we have a lot of, for example, wealthy doctors that work in Rochester, yet they'll live in a place like Somerby and Byron. Well, that's nice, but the city doesn't get income tax dollars, and the city doesn't get the property tax dollars if they're not living in the city, yet the city is required to provide them the infrastructure. We're a regional center. We have 110,000 jobs here in Rochester, but only 42,000 or so households. That means we need to provide infrastructure, policing, and other governmental services for a lot of people that don't pay property taxes here. The state of Minnesota continues to just stab us in the back, and that is a continuing issue. So we have the massive reductions in state aid. I think the property tax levy will go up about 6%, and you're probably not going to see too much of that yourselves, because we actually had some growth that accounted for that. Contrary to common belief, land values are not necessarily dropping in Rochester. There are some locations that they are, but we've actually been flat to up slightly compared to other parts of the nation. So I think the net of this is we're doing what we can at the city level to be fiscally responsible, and I'd like to see more of it. I think the unresolved issue, I brought up a lot of concerns I have with the Rochester Convention and Visitors Bureau, and that's not going away. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that. And bottom line is, we as the council are supposed to review their something like $2 million budget, and we didn't even see their budget. We've never talked about it, and we're probably going to go Monday and we're going to approve a budget that we're supposed to have oversight of, and yet we've never seen. That is a disgusting proposition for me. It's something that's got to stop. I think there's a lot of investigation that needs to be done with this group, and I'm going to continue to put the heat on. Thanks for your attention. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all of you, and thanks for watching.